Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Looking Deeper with the Reverend Sandra Herrick and yours truly, Dana King Francisco. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the podcast. The chat room is open, so come on in and sit a spell. Tonight we're going to be talking about letting go in order to make room to get to what's next. Good evening, Sandy Herrick.
How you doing, Dana? How
I'm
you doing?
good.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. And thank you for changing our date and bringing it to the now.
Uh-huh.
Oh, let me get situated. I just finished my women's group. So at the speed of light from one event to the next.
That's how we
there
roll.
We are, opening the door and moving on. How are you?
I'm well. I was in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan for nearly a week. And Todd and I just got back from a jeeping adventure up on Drummond Island in the Upper Peninsula. And it was beautiful weather up there and a lot of wildfires going on.
Yeah, talk about it. I mean, New York is inundated with smoke. We had it yesterday, and it reminded me so sadly of New Mexico and Montana, of the fires where the smoke just eliminates the visual of everything. And right now, New England is suffering from the smoke from up in Canada. So blessings to everybody. And the air quality is severely dangerous. And change.
Mm-hmm. Right on with that. Hey, Lady Hawk, it's good to have you in the chat room tonight.
Hi there, sweetheart. For those that don't know, Dana, describe what it means to go on an adventure with jeeping.
Well, sometimes it involves just having a leisurely stroll or drive through nature and going places that other vehicles perhaps can't. And sometimes it means going into extreme conditions where even angels would not dare to tread. Climbing over rocks and going through mud up to the windshield, it seems, and having to carry along a saw, and I do mean a chainsaw.
Oh my God.
In order to make room for the vehicle. So it varies. It's definitely an adventure and always a lot of fun.
I mean, hey Todd, how you
doing? Good.
Yeah, taking down dead limbs, not cutting down fully healthy trees. Todd wanted me to add that.
I have to say your vehicle looked like it had an adventure all its own.
It did. It did. That's why it is called Valhalla Bound.
Daddy, where are we going? Oh, Lordy.
Exactly. Skal.
So talk about how do we close a door, open a door, and even allow next to happen. This is a great conversation, and it seems like everything is on the brink of change. All of civilization is on the brink of change. How do you feel about that, Dana?
Oh, my gosh. When I was thinking about the wildfires that are going on all through, one side of Canada and the other side of Canada, so from the West Coast to the East Coast. And here in Michigan, while we were in the Upper Peninsula, there were 2,500 acres on fire, just a couple hours north of where Todd and I live. And we could, see the smoke. It permeated the air way up in the Upper Peninsula across the Mackinac Bridge. And it really did get me thinking as I was pondering things about sometimes it's scorched earth before we can move on.
Right. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, we can journal and move on, or sometimes it's scorched earth.
Yeah.
You ever done that?
Oh, good God, yes. It's I wasn't able to bring the profoundness of what we're talking about tonight, because fire has been a part of my life The very first time I ever really remember when fire was a real, I think the best way, it was invasive. It invaded my psyche, was when I was about 12 years old. My father was a volunteer fireman in our small area in Connecticut because we lived out in the country. And to wake up to the sound of the fire, sirens, and my father running out, and when he came back, for him to smell like smoke and to be told that there was a loss of life, that a child was trapped because we were going to go down and watch the fire, and we were told, you can't go in, there's a loss of life. And even that gives me the goosebumps. You know, when we close doors, when scorched earth, when something happens and life is altered, whether someone loses a life or life as we know it is lost, it's over. That's really what we're talking about tonight.
Yes.
And it's hard for us to digest that we have to face, as we're alive, the loss of life as we know it, or with people that we love, or with the way we assume forever is supposed to continue. Let's talk about that for a second. How do you deal with that space where we get trapped into life is supposed to be forever, and we in Americana thinking are really surprised when life changes, that it's interrupted?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
I've lived a life of interruptions.
Yes.
So I tend to be somebody who is okay with moving on to the next, but I'm not so much always okay with letting go of the past.
So describe that, because how do we deal with that? How have you dealt with that? What does that mean to you, Dana?
Well, as I've gotten older, what it means is that I have to actually sit with what part of the past I want to bring forward with me into the future or in the now, because everything can change in a heartbeat.
Literally.
From the moment that I had the stroke in 2004 and was unable to walk without being strapped into a harness.
Right.
And so when the doctor said, we want to put you on antidepressants and we want to have you on all of these medications, I looked at them and I said, but why? Right. Well, because your life is never going to be the same. Your brain is not ever going to be the same. Your abilities with the right side of your body are never going to be the same. And I looked at the cardiologist and I said, but isn't that the point?
Wow.
And he looked at, that's what he said. So, and in the next moment, I was meeting with a psychiatrist from a local Christian psychiatric hospital. They sent her to see me because they couldn't figure out why I was thinking in this manner. And long and short of it, she was very familiar with my books and who I was and who I am. And she said, this is all part of your journey, isn't it?
Wow.
I said, yes. And could you inform my team of neurologists and cardiologists? And she did. And they all came into my room, all three of them, stood at the foot of my bed and said, you are a unique case here on this floor. And we've never experienced anything like what goes on in this room or your attitude. And we've learned something from you. And I said, maybe that was the point. Maybe
what a wonderful sacrifice. Thank you.
Maybe that was the point. So being willing to say that this is who I am now is not easy always. But when you don't have an ulterior or another pathway, and all you have is who you are right now, you pick yourself up by the bootstraps. And, you can spend a little bit of time on the pity pot, but I'm not really fond of that either. I mean, how do you do it, Sandy, when in a moment's notice you're different? It's different. Life is different.
Well, to be honest, it depends on what has happened. And there's that place of, depending on, is it a loss of life that someone has passed away? Is it a loss of a lifestyle? I remember the very first time I was in a car accident that had significance. I was a teenager and I was in the car with my girlfriends from high school, and a tanker hit us from behind. And I was in the back seat, but I got everybody out of the car. I talked to the driver and the wife that was in and the child, and at the end, after the police came, I was sitting on the side of the road, literally just sitting there. And I knew that I was okay, but I knew and this was way before I was really into spirituality, something was suspended in me, because I went into this place of caring, or making certain everybody was cared for. It gives me the shivers to even say it. And the police sent everybody home, but said to me, "We're taking you to the hospital." And I said, "Why?" They said, "Because you're in shock." And I started to cry, because it was like, something was over. It was almost like an age of innocence was over. It was a part of me that I didn't know about myself was over and beginning. And I use that as that reference point, because something happened where, excuse me, my life, everybody in the car's life was threatened. And it was exactly like you say, in a heartbeat, something's different. And I have a sense inside me that something in my life got bumped out, because from that point on, my life was different. It's like I was no longer a part of those girls within months, because we were graduating. Everybody was going in a different direction. And my life was no longer a part of them in the familiar. I got lost from, well, I'm not going to college. I went to art school, and the best way I can describe it, our identities no longer were cohesive. And that change from childhood, it certainly was, and several people in our group died. All of a sudden, the war was there, Vietnam was there. People were killed in car accidents, and how come we weren't? It was like life got very real, very fast. In nothing's forever. Our childhood was over.
Yeah.
In that car accident, and I'm saying this for the first time, my childhood was over. And as I pause thinking about that, and even can feel myself sitting, this is very interesting. I'm having a very fascinating moment. I'm sitting on the curb, really feeling the aloneness. I'm going to start belching. Excuse me. And what's happening to me in this moment is that I had an experience maybe 5 years later, about 4 years later, where I met my grandfather, who died just the summer before I was born in a car accident. Good Lord, I'm belching like crazy. And anybody that knows me knows we're working with spirit here. He was decapitated in a car accident. And in this very moment, Dana, I am sitting on the curb like I saw my grandfather sitting on the curb, and realizing thank you everybody for being with me. I'm realizing my grandfather was an intervention. He intervened in that car accident.
Wow.
I'm having the explicit experience of, oh my God, no wonder I was sitting on the side of the curb. I met my grandfather sitting on the side of the curb after his accident, not realizing something happened, that life was over.
Wow.
And the police actually even said they did not understand how no one was hurt from that accident, from a Tetra truck hitting the back of the car. And my spine was different. I had a lot of pain. I had to go to the doctors, and my shoulder, my wings were, I mean, I'm having a revelation here. Like, oh my God, I'm being explained to something that happened to me when I was 17 years old, as I'm 75 and a half years old for the first time.
Wow.
Something in my life was pushed out of me into me. And something in my childhood literally was eliminated, and I was pushed into the next realm of who I would be as a spiritual person in that moment. I am so grateful that I'm having the opportunity to share this with you and discover it in this moment, because the rest of my life was so different from what I assumed I was going to be living from that moment on.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing it. It's interesting to me how as we age, things will happen, and it'll take us back to a certain place in time that maybe we haven't given much thought to in recent time, like you just described. Last night I received, or the night before last, I received a text message from my son Dane telling me that Chuck Saint Amour passed away. And Chuck Saint Amour, Charlie, was my very first boss at the newspaper. And I was 17 when he hired me.
Wow.
And I adored this man. He and Teresa, if you just happen to be listening, or anybody from the Grand Rapids Press group, we all know Chuck Saint Amour was a pretty amazing, top shelf, classy man. And, you know, he took a risk on this kid that just moved here from Apple Valley, Minnesota. He hired me in, and he supported me my entire 33-year career. But what was interesting is when Dane texted that to me, I immediately became 17 years old again.
Oh my God, we're both having 17-year-old moments.
Isn't it? And going back to, sometimes when we're that age, we think everyone is just always going to be around.
Right.
And somewhere in my 60-year-old brain, I was shocked that Charlie, who was probably in his 80s, left.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
It's fascinating. What does that mean to you with his end, his completion in the physical?
Well, it brings to mind more fully my age.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, age is one of those things, and assumptions and anything we thought about what our life would be like at a certain age, or what we would look like, or what we would be doing or not doing.
Exactly.
When we have moments to look back, and I'm certainly not 17 anymore, neither are you, it really gives pause to, so what's happened between 17 and 60?
Right.
And what do we bring forward?
Well, it's interesting because you're also talking about Charlie as someone who truly saw you.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm talking about the police, someone who saw me. They saw something was different in me.
Yes.
And they claimed it and they cared for it. And I cried because somebody was caring for me in that moment that I didn't even know I needed care for.
Right.
And Charlie, in the way I'm hearing you say it, took care of this wonderful 17-year-old novice and cared for the rest of your life by saying yes to you.
Yes. And he was just an he was a Vietnam veteran.
Oh my God.
And so we had that, you know, being an Army brat got me a few places over these years, and still does, frankly. But it gave me pause to think about where I am now, and the gratitude for having had him in my life, and looking at how things have changed since that time, and what parts of my 17-year-old self am I still hanging on to, if any.
I would hope you do.
Well, I've always said, in my heart and in my mind, I'm still 17. That was my favorite time of life, 17. And it's hard, isn't it hard to let go sometimes, Sandy, of youth?
Well, let's talk about this, because I have some feeling about this.
Okay, good.
The feeling is that my body has aged. My mind has developed. My psyche has expanded. My attitude about life is still profoundly in the environment of the exquisiteness of being a teenager. In that radical 17-year-old that is no longer so young that they have to be governed by the parents, and you're not so old where you're kicked out and abandoned. But it's at that ripeness. I still, see, there's the goosebumps on my goosebumps. I still experience in my brain the joy, when I have joy, of being young in my joy. I'm not an old person going, oh, that's nice. It's like, damn, that's exciting. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
And may it always be so.
Yes. So I'm not giving up and I do share this with you. We're young at heart. And we know the difference between people that are old in their hearts, God bless, even when they're young.
Yes.
And I don't want to, I have to give up being a high school student and giving up a lot of the people that were in high school with me. But some of the people linger throughout my life. I give up living at home under the auspices of my family in the dynamic of that. I mean, I don't want to be there anymore, but I have the enthusiasm and I think the best way to say it is the opportunity to not feel stagnant in life.
Yes.
And at 17, believe me, I was not stagnant in life. I was graduating high school, and I was finally free from being stagnated by going to school.
Yep.
There's the belching. And I did. I graduated at 17, and it was like, finally, I got to leave behind what I actually felt was keep holding me back.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And so so the joy of, oh my God, something's over. Again, it depends on what it is. If I'm losing someone that I love, I will take pause. I grieve. You just lost your dog. I mean, Gabriel, please.
Yes. Horrible.
No, right. When I lost the horses, I don't recover because I wanted horses all my life. And then all of a sudden I get them in my 30s. And I had over 30 years of being with horses. And I'm not going to have horses again. That is over. But to know that I had them is inside me with such joy that I'm filled with it. I'm not without it. I grieve them. The grief of losing them is transformational.
Yes.
I can't say I didn't recover from it, I don't leave it with, oh, good, that's over. It becomes a ingestion. It becomes a medicine. It becomes transformative inside me. I mean, again, my skin is active. I am blessed with the essence of their presence and the medicine they have procured in me because of their existence. You and your horses, you still have the blessing of their medicine active.
Mm-hmm.
And you still have to prepare for the day when one of those pearls will pass.
Right.
And there's the joy of, and I mean it, they're tucked into us forever. I think shock of something being over is different than knowing something has to change.
Yes. It's a good way to put that.
I have been shocked that something's over, and I had a breakdown because of it. I had this shock of my life being pulled away from me, my business being pulled away from me, my everything that I had was pulled away from me. And that happened when my father passed away. And the shock of it, I didn't try to hold on to it, but I had to work really hard to hold on to my sanity because it affected the dream was acquired, and then the dream literally just about destroyed me. So the shock was, oh my God, the very thing I dreamt of just about eliminated me. And how do I deal with the shame of that, the confusion of that, the surprise of that, the delusion of it being safe? It was so dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And the fear that, oh my God, am I embarrassing myself? Did I fail? And having to really navigate my ego, my heart's desire, my ambition, my idea of I finally became something. Will my parents be proud of me? Oh my God, I have nothing. So we're talking about things that on a scale of how does my ego feel about it? How does my soul feel about it? How does my spirit, my skin feel about it? And the death of living the way I thought I was going to live the rest of my life.
Mm.
It took a very long time to adjust to the humbleness of that. Truly the humbleness of that. And be modest and start again. There's the beauty of the horror that we can survive what we don't even know we have to endure.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where spirit comes in and says, well, is this a lesson, or is the, what does this feed me? How does this make me who I am, rather than take me away from me and make me less than who I am? When you talk about your stroke, it made you so much more of who you are.
Yes, I would agree with that. Sandy, have there been times when you've actually had to do the plus column, minus column? What are the benefits and what are the painful bits in a situation or with a person? I guess, in other words, in those times when you've had to decide, or maybe it was decided for you, what is the litmus test for you to let go when you finally say, I am letting go, I can't do this anymore, whatever it happens to be, I need to move on? How do you figure that out for yourself?
Well, again, it depends on the situation. In my first marriage, to let go was, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
To let go was to let go of the horror of that we were really not meant to be together. it wasn't that we were bad, even though the marriage became horrific because she was a Vietnam vet and had a breakdown and there was violence and this. I mean, there's so many wonderful things I can say about how bad it was. But the list, when you say, how do you let go? I actually let go because finally there was compassion for this isn't, we don't belong together. And it wasn't a mistake. It was a rupture. It was a rupture that somehow somebody decided something for us and we thought we had to comply to it. And it ruptured our lives. And once we realized this is not our lives, this isn't my life with you, this is not your life with me as a life, there was mercy. For that, there was truly mercy. It wasn't, I'm leaving you because I'm disgusted. It's like, enough. We have to be kind and stop. There are other places where I realize I have to leave. Even in my family, I have to leave because this is so toxic for me. Me trying to make the best of it is killing me. Or I'm not seeing that there's nothing here to really work out other than insanity. And to be able to grieve the idea of the hope or the wish that it could be different is important. I have walked away from things and went, phew, thank God. But again, it depends on how involved my heart is. It depends on, am I annoyed? Am I pissed off? Am I like, oh my God, what an idiot, just walk away? I can walk away from things that look stupid. But if my heart is involved, I'm glad you like that one.
I do. Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, please. I mean, I have gotten up and walk away.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not beyond just going, oh, that's enough, and just walk away.
Me either.
And I love, on one of the TikTok ones, what's her name? She was in 50 Shades of Grey. I don't know her name. I never even saw the movie, but whatever her name is. She's the daughter of the guy from Miami Vice, Melanie Griffith's daughter. There you go. Okay, so there's a TikTok thing where she's sitting, having breakfast, eating her cereal, and her boyfriend comes in and says, I think we need to break up. And she's munching on her cereal and looks at him, doesn't even blink an eye, and she goes, okay, are you going to move out before the end of the day? And he goes, what, that's it? That's all? And I was like, what? And he was done. She was done by having it be done. And he's like, what, you're going to throw me out? Those kind of things drive me crazy. It's like, when it's done and you know it's done, it's good to eat your cereal and just leave the table.
That's right. Oh,
Don't
my.
back and debate what you already know is over. And it's that beauty of, when you're done, sometimes it has to show you're done before you're done.
Yes.
Or someone needs to go, aren't you done yet? maybe you should walk down the road with me because you can't make a decision. Let me just get you out of the area.
Yes.
It's hard work knowing it's done. It's not always easy. And when it's easy, what I want to say about that is take credit for something being complete, especially if it's abusive, unkind, or overly confusing. Sometimes things are done because you can't figure it out on how to make it continue.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's nothing to work with anymore. The universe has completed it for you and just said, well, you can be in this place and stay vacant. And haven't you met people where they stay in a place there's nothing left and they won't leave?
Yes.
How
Yeah.
do you advise them through that? Because it's like there's nothing here, and you have to, you may want to consider making a choice.
Well, a wise woman once said to me, I will give you 10 minutes to tell me what's wrong. And if you're not going to make any changes, don't tell me about it again. That would be you. But I mean, not quite that extreme, but what I've learned is that some people like the misery, or they're afraid of joy, or they're afraid of taking a chance. And finally, in all of my years, I can look at somebody who is stuck either on the pity pot or in a dreadful situation. And I have finally realized I can't change it for them. I
Right.
try, and I know you've tried too.
Right.
And I will give it, after hearing about something for the umpteenth time, I'm done listening to it. I'm done giving it any of my energy or my spirit.
Right.
You know what I'm saying.
Absolutely, because there's a difference between being angst and being bored by the angst.
Well, yeah, and when I become bored with the angst and it's just hit replay because you know what that conversation's going to be like
Todd
next time
have
around
anything
too.
to say about that?
He's not saying a word. He's just got his lips zipped over there. Yeah, so, but I do have compassion because
Right.
there are a variety of reasons of why people stay in a really rotten family situation or relationship or whatever it happens to be. And just giving myself permission not to have to fix it or own it. Or we were talking about that in our class the other night.
Right.
Not always being the fixer-upper.
Exactly.
And that can come off as looking as though you're chilly or cold-hearted or what have you, because some people will die. It reminds me of, the clients that I've had that stayed married for 100 years, whatever it happened to be. And when they come to me to work as a medium and I offer my condolences, they look at me and say, I wish that rat bastard would have died 50 years ago.
Right.
How sad is that?
Well, it's perplexing because, and here is my thought on that. You have to take a look at why someone refuses to not be alone.
Right. And there are a lot of reasons for that.
There's lots of reasons
Right.
for that. And some of them are, we can have mercy. Some of them are, okay, we can have respect. And some are, okay, if you stay, you can never talk about it again.
There it is. That's it right there. There it is.
And it's like, okay, this conversation will never be had. We will never talk about this again. And I'll smile and you made your decision. And there's the beauty of, and I mean this, there's the beauty of the awareness of, even in a conversation, when are you tired of listening to someone complain, and how do you bring it to the end of, this is no longer a part of my life?
Yes.
Does something drift away? Do you close the door? Is something taken away? I'll be very honest. If somebody breaks up with me, it's always much more difficult than if I leave. And I had... I'm just saying.
Yeah.
My ego does have an opinion about this. I mean, I literally, I broke up with somebody and walked out and I championed it, and then we had a moment to get together and have lunch, and then he broke up with me during lunch, and it was like, oh my God, I was traumatized.
And how
I thought I had this handled.
and how long did you sit with that, Sandy, before you were able to get over that hump?
Unfortunately, a little bit longer than I want to even admit to.
There you go.
And it is that reckoning of, why is this hurting me that I'm left? Leaving, there was a self-preservation. Being left was rejection on something that I had to look at that was deeper than this idiot leaving me. It was like I was now the idiot for feeling something, and why was I feeling it? And I had to have mercy and compassion for me, and even seeing the trauma that it was affecting. Mm-hmm. And I want everybody to really be able to come into the medicine of what you and I are talking about tonight, in realizing that it is traumatic to face change.
Yes, it is.
It is traumatizing. And we are now in a very different mindset with mental illness or mental awareness or therapy or process, where we realize trauma is nested deep within inside us, and change is traumatizing.
Yes.
And so we may be facing a change that doesn't equate to the trauma we're feeling or the emotions we're feeling during this particular change. And that's what happened to me, is like, wait a second, I'm having trauma that does not equate to this person, but I'm traumatized. Mm-hmm. And so the brilliance of your question of how long did it take? It took me longer than I was even I was like, this is shocking. Something's going on with me that this person triggered. Mm. And I had to look really deep in me about being abandoned or left. And now we're talking about closing the door on karma. Mm. When you're saying goodbye to somebody again, or someone's hurting you again. Mm-hmm. The closing the door of trauma from karma. I am certain that the man that Chuck, whatever, how politely to Charles to say his name, karmically, he has to be deep within inside you because of everything that happened to you that graced you with being able to become such a profound member of that community.
Yes. Yes.
Will you be going to his funeral?
I've been waiting for his obituary to come out, and yes, I would like to go to his visitation or funeral. Absolutely. Yes.
And that's a lot of people you'll be seeing mm-hmm. that really supported you in so many outrageous years of your life.
Exactly. Exactly. It's interesting what we bring with us through the changes. That was a very long time ago when he finally retired from the newspaper, and then I finally left the newspaper at 50 years old. It was a long time ago, and sometimes the things of the past sneak up in a moment. It really snuck up on me how much he meant to me. And of course, a lot of the executives and friends from the newspapers, they've changed to, they've moved on to other newspapers. Some of them are on CNN or MSNBC and all of that. But there was something about Charlie's passing that I had to sit with. Why is it hitting me this way? And, and I'm a ponderer about a lot of things. But as my friend Darlene always says, sometimes you just piss me off because you will dive in without even looking. You just go for it, which I will agree with that. And she's a Taurus, so she's more measured, which I appreciate. But then there are other things that I have to be hit over the head or in the heart before I finally say, you know what, this isn't good anymore. This is hurting my heart. This is hurting my spirit. Or this is a bunch of BS, and I can't believe I fell for it all those years. What was the matter with me?
Right. Well, there's the trauma. I'm going to start belching. There's the trauma. What the matter is we don't know our trauma. And I think it's very significant that we be able to address that. We don't know about trauma until the trauma identifies itself after the fact. while you're being traumatized. God, it's like, oh, being beaten up as a child, I didn't know I was being traumatized. I was just being hit because my parents hit me and I did something and they were excessive. I didn't know my family dynamic was traumatizing me. Did you know you were being traumatized as an infant when your mother gave you and you were adopted or fostered? We didn't know those traumas were being established. We were just like, I hope I get caught. Somebody catches me. I hope there's a landing someplace. We're just living our life.
Mm-hmm.
And me getting hit by a car, you getting hired by Charles, we don't know that this is an impact. We're grateful, we're happy, or we're sad, we're confused. But that hit into our soul, that wah, 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 wah. It's well, let's see. I have to say this because here it is to say. You may be thinking about, oh my God, I'm affected by his passing. And I just felt, oh my God, Dana, he's visiting you. And the two of you are together reminiscing.
And I've thought about that very thing, Sandy. Lady Hawk is pointing out that you and I both have a Charles.
Yes, we do. And he still visits often.
Yeah. Last night I was watching the documentary on Prime, Amazon Prime, Happy Shiny People, about the Duggar.
Oh my God, I was going to tell you, you got to watch that and we'll talk.
Well, we got through the second segment. Shocking. But there again, at one point I looked at Todd. They were talking about corporal punishment.
Yes.
And I mean, when I was a young kid, if I said no, literally, if I said no to my mother, I knew that when I got home, I would get whipping with the belt.
Right.
For saying no.
Right.
And I don't mean just a swat on the hind end. I mean a whipping.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really thought about that until I watched the show last night. And I looked at Todd and I said, well, that brings back a few memories.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's two things I want to talk about. The Happy Shiny People, the man with the long beard that, looked out, you have to,
hit him with a switch.
Children.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Men like that terrify me.
Yeah. And his wife.
Terrify me. Yes. The other one that I binged, pretty almost like I started watching it and I was up to 4:00 in the morning watching it, is on Netflix, and it's Unbelievable. That's what it's called. And it's about a serial rapist and how the first girl that was raped was not believed. She was a foster child and she got raped and she was not believed, and what the police did to her. And then the serial rapist is out there, and the two women detectives that finally found this guy. And I'm sitting here watching this thinking, why am I watching? What it was? It was the dignity of someone saying, someone's out there hurting women and we're not going to just let it slide.
Exactly.
And at the end, I won't blow it for anybody, I started to cry and I started to heave in my chest. And I realized, how many times have we as women said help and we were told no?
Well, that's a whole show.
We need to go there.
We need to go there. Kelly Spencer is saying, oh my God, that show, I just finished it. Crazy stuff, meaning Happy Shiny People.
Yes.
Yeah, and so, people right now are letting go of their religion, not necessarily of their faith, but of their religion. And that's not easy to do either, letting go and allowing for exploration into other regions of spirituality. People are deconstructing the religion of their youth or of their adulthood, whatever it is. There are so many things right now that people are letting go of and making room for what's next. And sadly, there are charlatans and there are people who are just lurking to help provide, what's next. So for me, when I'm letting go of something, it's really important for me to let go and be. And one of the best things of advice that did work for me, and this is just me. When I divorced Steve, I was told by an elder, do not date for 2 years. Let this letting go happen so that you don't bring into the next what you haven't fully let go of. And I did that. And not everybody can, I'm not saying that, but what I valued about that experience was the fact that the letting go of a long time, 25-year relationship, the letting go came in ebbs and flows and in high tides and low tides. So for me, when I'm making a change, even if it's going no contact with my adoptive family, which most of you know that I have done, that was not a decision that was made lightly. It was a decision that was necessary to save my sanity and to save my heart.
Right.
So it
doesn't mean you didn't grieve either.
No, well, exactly. And so the pause is that time of grieving. And for me, so it was 2 years before I dated. For me, I never brought a man into the house overnight until I married Todd. But that was just for me to do that. That's not for everyone. But in that time was the pause to let the layers of grief go and to really discover who am I now? I'll never forget the first time after all of those years of marriage. Steve and I were together a total of 25 years, married for 19. Sandy, I will never forget the first time I walked into the grocery store, Meyer Thrifty Acre in Rockford, which is where I met Todd, actually, all those years later, but not having a wedding ring on. And I felt like everyone was looking at me.
Wow.
Like, she doesn't have a wedding ring on. Now, probably nobody noticed it.
Right.
And it was all with me. But that was such a gigantic change from being a very married woman with children and yada, yada, mortgage, all that good stuff, and all of a sudden going grocery shopping without a wedding ring.
So I want to honor the withdrawal.
Yes.
And I'm using the word withdrawal because you are withdrawing from the addictiveness of being a co-conspirator to an alcoholic.
Yes.
Of being involved in the dynamic of a situation where how could you leave the children with the expressiveness of, oh my God, you're a devoted person who really did know life was supposed to go on. And you were supposed to keep those promises.
Yes.
And Dean had a lot to do with you being able to see it was done. So there's that place where your children saw something also that supported, why are you suffering?
Oh, you mean Dane? Yes.
Dane. Sorry. Yeah. Yes, Dane. I apologize.
And Elise. Yeah. Well,
Elise, absolutely.
Yeah. Elise at 12, because our kids are... Well, and she's just hell on wheels anyway, but at 12 years old, she looked at me at Burger King on Alpine Avenue and said, are you ever just going to leave him?
Exactly.
I was shocked.
Exactly. So each, everybody has a view of what's enough.
Yes.
And it is amazing how many people say, well, we're staying together for the children. And the children go, don't do it for my benefit. It's not working out for me, really.
Mm-hmm.
You may want to rethink that. And it's that beauty of the withdrawal is what were you in withdrawal of as being a wife, of having a ring on your finger?
Hmm. Well, it was being married in the Catholic Church, right in front of God and everybody, and well, all of it, from religion to just all
Which
of
is
it.
which is the idea of the innocent child.
Yes.
It is there's the end of your own innocence.
Yes.
There's the end of the promise that if you're a good girl, you get a good life. There's the end of the dream that you're loved, you have children, you've got the picket fence. You had the perfect hairdo, for God's sakes.
I did.
So you were extracted from an image that literally was killing you.
Yes.
And we have to be able to say, am I going to die, or will I let the image die?
That's what I wanted to talk about next.
Okay.
Because it is an image.
It is an image. It is.
And it is an image. It's letting go of the image of. I remember one time somebody said, "You mean to tell me you two are getting divorced? You're like Barbie and Ken. Right. What are you thinking?" But they didn't have privy to the inside of those four walls, right?
Exactly.
And it is the end of an image and the redefining of, again, who am I now?
Exactly.
Well, that's when I was able to get my Stevie Nicks on, right?
Well, at the age of 17.
Exactly. That was actually the end of wearing personally tailored suits.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
And there's the beauty of, and closing that door. There's the closing of decades.
Yes.
There's closing of relationships. There's closing of schools and academia. There's closing of the image of. There's a closing of an idea. I can't look like I did at 17. I can certainly feel like it.
Let's talk about that.
Oh, there you go. Yes, I'm willing.
Yeah, I mean, here I am letting my hair go silver and white. And there's a liberation, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with coloring your hair or any of that. It's a personal choice of what we do with the way that we're looking. But there is something liberating about either dyeing my hair bright blue and loving it, or letting it go silver and looking at those strands and saying, oh my, you're not 17 anymore, but you feel 17. Isn't it kind of liberating when you finally get to say, at least I got to the point of, I really don't care what the neighbors think about whether my hair is silver or whether my hair is naturally dark.
Right.
When did you finally say, I don't really give a crap about what anybody thinks about the way that I'm dressing or styling my hair or any other thing?
Well, that started young. And I mean that when my uniform was in art school at 17. It was, my uniform became my uniform when we didn't have jeans then. We had dungarees, but I was wearing jeans going to art school. I had my go-go boots. I had my poncho. And when I was 17, I didn't have to look like the collegiate person going to Norwalk High School. Stepping into a freedom of identity also happened in the 60s. 65 and 66, lifetimes, eons were different. 65, you still had the stamp of your teased hair. 66, you were growing hair under your armpits. So it was like there was that place of I was able to be who I was because I wasn't scared. I actually kind of got entered. Well, let me be honest. I didn't mind pissing people off.
Well, once I get over the shock of that, I'll be able to digest that statement.
I mean, oh God. Okay, so here I am in therapy at 24 years old, and I'm in Westport, Connecticut, and I mean, we are talking highbrow Westport, Connecticut, and I'm this radical person that's already, in a lot of trouble, this, that, and the other thing. And we all know I have the ability to say 4-letter words. And I'm in my therapy, and I'm saying 4-letter words with a robustness that was really quite expressive, according to me. And this dentist, this uptight dentist, looked at me and he said, "Could you stop swearing?" And I just looked at him, and I proceeded to swear. And it was the first time I said, "I know what I mean when I say fuck. What do you think I'm saying when you have sex?" And it was like, I was absolutely in my right to shock somebody because I was being honest.
Yeah.
And they were trying to stop me from being honest. So your question is really great, because what you're really saying, when did I want to start being honest rather than people pleasing or fearful that I wasn't going to be accepted? And that I was told by my friends, starting when I was in, maybe 8th grade, when all of a sudden it was like I had a mouth, I stood up for people differently, and I didn't need to belong. I needed to state something. And it wasn't a defiance, it was a showing up. There's a difference between being defiant and showing up. I didn't experience myself as defiant. I wasn't setting out to be a fuck you. It was like, this is it.
Mm-hmm. Here I am.
This is it.
Yeah.
And I was upset when people, oh God, people with their glasses at the end of their nose looking down at you with such prestige.
Mm-hmm.
That arrogance of prestige, that uppity, you are beneath us.
Ew.
That always inspired me to stand tall. And I'm short, but I pulled it off.
Yes, you did. You got big real quick. Well, Sandy, we're at the top of the hour, and I think that we need to pick up next month when we gather about how to stop people pleasing and why do we. And
Yes.
As women, we do a lot of stuff to.
Yes, we do.
I think we need to go there.
I would appreciate it. I would love to.
All
would
right.
be my right. Okay. Todd, good night.
Night.
Dana, good night.
Good night, Sandy.
When will the funeral be?
I don't know. I'm going to, when the show is over, take a look at the obituaries. And he lived in Muskegon, Michigan, so I'll be having a look-see.
Okay. Well, God bless to a mentor and a person who truly identified you as worthy of being you.
Yes.
Truly, truly, truly. Okay, my loves, thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you next month.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, Sand.
Good night. Bye-bye.